What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking all about GitHub Copilot. We're going to talk about what GitHub Copilot is. We're going to do some demonstrations about what this thing is capable of. We're going to give it some code samples and see if we can, write some functions, maybe solve some toy problems from LeetCode. Maybe see if we can get it to create some React components or something like that, just to kind of like try out some different types of input and see what kind of code this thing can generate. And then I want to talk about my opinions on what this means to us as developers. So first of all, what is GitHub Copilot? GitHub Copilot, this is their website here, copilot.github.com. As you can see right here, this is a technical preview. This is not the final build or release of GitHub Copilot, which means that this will get better over time. It is still a project in the making, but as you can see, they market this as your AI pair programmer. With GitHub Copilot, get suggestions for whole lines of code or entire functions right inside your editor. They have a nice demonstration here about how this works, which this is actually like fairly close to how it actually looks inside the editor. I have kind of briefly played with this over the last couple days and kind of tried out a couple things on my own. Which I will get into and show you guys here in a little bit. So one of the first things that I do want to point out here is that GitHub Copilot is powered by OpenAI. If you're not familiar with OpenAI, OpenAI is another artificial intelligence company founded by Elon Musk and a couple other people, and basically they built what came to be known as GPT-3. GPT-3 was basically this like groundbreaking natural language processing generator. It's really cool. If you have not seen it, go look it up. Really powerful AI / like machine learning language models. I believe they were trained on like 175 billion data points or something like that, some super crazy number. And then companies with other data sets can come in and train their own models essentially. So that's where GitHub Copilot comes in. GitHub Copilot was trained on billions of lines of public code. They used open source public repositories to basically train their own model. Now, there is a lot of controversy that I've been seeing going around surrounding GitHub Copilot, as far as a lot of things like who owns the code and open source licensing and things like that. And I think that this is like really early stages of these kinds of talks and controversies, because eventually this stuff is going to have to be cleared up before this thing can really like get off the ground. If we look here under training set, what data has GitHub Copilot been trained on? GitHub Copilot was trained on open source repositories, open source code. A lot of open source code is still protected under licensing. From what I understand, open source falls under what is considered copyleft. From what I understand about copyleft, I believe it's essentially that if you take something from open source and use it yourself, you have to redistribute that publicly, is what I understand from it, which basically means that if there is not a way for them to get around the licensing of this open source code, I think that that's going to make this very unappealing for enterprise use, because companies will end up getting sued left and right for use of licensed code. That is one of the biggest controversies behind this that I have seen so far, and that's one of the big concerns about this tool, is that it does not respect licensing. And of course, one of the other big concerns surrounding GitHub Copilot is the concern from developers that artificial intelligence is coming to take our jobs as developers. We're going to talk a bit more about that later, and I'll kind of give you my opinion on that, but not before we get into demonstrating the powers of GitHub Copilot. They do have a whole section here on their website about protecting originality, and they essentially talk about the very low rate at which code is recited verbatim. They say it's about 0.1% of the time that code is recited verbatim, but I could still see that in some cases it could be very possible that you could still find yourself in some deep water in that 0.1% of the time. Or maybe there's still issues about having a mixture of licensed code. We don't know the answers to these questions yet, and I really just don't know like how GitHub is going to kind of maneuver their way around that issue. Of course, there's also concerns about whether or not this artificial intelligence model will leak personal data, will it leak API keys. I'm sure that they do talk a bit about that in here, and I'm sure that they've gone through some extent of trying to filter out that data as much as possible. but there are always exceptions, and code is pretty much never perfect. I'm sure that under a rare circumstance there will be eventually a key of some sort or some sort of personal data that gets leaked. I think it's really just a matter of what, where, and when, not really if it's going to happen. So there are a couple ways that you can go about having Copilot generate code. You can start typing functions directly, or you can give it context by writing out comments and then start typing a function, and it can actually utilize those comments to help define the function and what you're trying to create. Personally, my favorite way so far has been to go the method of writing comments and then kind of letting Copilot interpret from that. I think that you can give it more context that way than if you just started writing a function. So what I want to do first here is we're going to find some LeetCode problems here, and we're going to feed them to Github Copilot and see if we can get it to solve some LeetCode problems. We'll start off with something a little more on the easier side. So let's try this one, palindrome number, and let's see if this thing can solve it. Alright, so given an integer x, return true if x is a palindrome integer. Let's see if we can just like take this, comment it out, and then it gave us a suggestion here. Yeah, so is palindrome integer. Okay, it interpreted that we're going to take the parameter of x here. And then you can see here this grayed out code right here. This is the suggestion that is coming from GitHub Copilot. So you can also see here it allows you to go through multiple suggestions, or we can hit tab to accept. So let's look at some of these other suggestions here. Okay, so it looks like it gives us 3 suggestions. Let's try this one. We'll just copy this, paste it in here, and we're gonna run it, and we're gonna see what this tells us. Oh yeah, it accepted our answer. I wonder if this will pass all of the test cases. Oh, well, look at that. So it passed all of the test cases for this toy problem here. It's actually kind of crazy too. It went the route of basically joining multiple methods here, which I know it also gave us other options as well that were not join methods, but it's kind of cool that it even goes as far as being able to join methods like that. That's kind of interesting. Let's try another one here. So let's look at median of 2 sorted arrays. This is a hard level LeetCode problem, which I am terrible at toy problems myself, so in all honesty, like, I probably couldn't solve this myself if you gave me several hours to do so. But we're gonna try doing this the same method. So let's go create a function again. We have a suggested function name here with the 2 parameters that we need. Let's look at some other suggestions here. That one's really long. That one's kind of long too. This one looks really short. Let's see if this actually works. Curious to see. Okay, this one gave us the wrong answer here. So far it seems like we're about 50-50 on whether or not this thing gives us the right answer. Let's see. Let's try one of these other suggestions here. We'll see if it gives us something else that can actually pass. Let's try this one. Oh, this one gave us a runtime error. Yeah, let's see. It seems like this time it gave us a bit of a different format here. Let's try this one. Okay, so it worked that time. So it seems like it's kind of hit or miss, and I think it's taking context not just from the comment up here, but it gave me a different suggested function name too. Last time it just told me it gave me the suggestion to call it medium. or median, I think, but this time it said find median sorted array, and I think that function name gave it more context and allowed it to return a better suggestion for us. So this suggestion worked. Let's see if it passes all of the test cases here. And this one passed as well. This one actually is 87% faster than all of the JavaScript submissions. So that's actually really impressive. This actually looks to have written some pretty efficient code here. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I definitely have to kind of remember that going forward, that not just it takes context from multiple places, the comments and the function names. So I think that the more accurate context that you can give it, the better the chances are that you're going to get more functional, more accurate code. So that's really cool. Let's try something else. So now that we've seen how it does with a couple toy problem examples ranging, in difficulty from like easy to hard, I would like to try something a little bit different. This time I want to try creating a React component. So this is something I have not tried doing with this at all yet, and I'm interested to see how this does. So let's see, create component. It looks like my VS Code's running a little slow right now, so hopefully this isn't too bad. Let's see. Let's just see if we can create a React component that renders a button, something simple. So gives us the render function here. Okay, returns a button here. And then closes it. I think this is just a linting error for formatting. Yeah, indentions. Let's see what's going on here. Expected shorthand method. Oh, okay, so let's see. Missing explicit type attribute. I think that it might also be an issue here that I don't have React imported here. We also want to, so this is also suggesting here export default component Copilot, or Copilot component, which is good. That's also being suggested by Copilot. So one thing I do notice here is that it seems like Copilot is suggesting kind of like an out-of-date method here. Although I did not look through the alternatives, I might go back and do that, but this is still using React.createClass instead of like a newer functional component type deal. Let's see. Oh, look, there's a better suggestion. Okay, it's giving us props, which we don't necessarily need. So, okay, here's our return block div. Sometimes it goes line by line like this, I've noticed. It kind of seems like it depends what you're doing, but I have seen it do this a couple times already where it won't give you the full multi-line suggestion like right away. It'll kind of just give you like line by line, and you have to kind of tab through it. So, all right, we're defining our component here. We're going to return, so we have our opening div bracket here. We're going to add this button here. Closing div, close the return block, and close the component block. So, let's see, unexpected block statements around it. So yeah, this is also, I have a linter installed on this code repo. So these are actually just like linting issues here. We can just go to fix. It didn't like basically that I was doing an unnecessary return because there's nothing above it, so I can just do an implicit return like this. So what is kind of nice here is that we're seeing that it created our Copilot component. It naturally assumes that we're going to take props here, and then I had to do a slight modification for my linter here to make this an implicit return instead of just having an actual return block, but that's not a big deal. It probably just assumes that I didn't have a linter, but I do. And then it gives us a div container here and then a button inside of it, which it gives us kind of a sample on click here, which is assuming that we're going to basically pass a function to this component as props that we will then call as an on click event. And then it just kind of gives us like a sample here where the text that you'll see inside of that button will go. So this is like a really simple React component, but it's really interesting. Like obviously I kind of had to like finagle with it a little bit, but that could also just be maybe I wasn't giving it clear enough context about what I wanted to do. I did only give it like a single line comment here that was not super descriptive, but it is pretty impressive for what it did given the small amount of information that I actually gave to it. So I definitely think that you could build React components with this, or at least kind of use it as like a form of autocomplete to speed up the pace at which you're creating React components. So I do want to try a little bit more with this React component. So I deleted my button that I have here, and what I want to try to do is so let's create a variable here and let's just call it, well actually let me just do this by comment, because this is one of those things where I think that it'll be more beneficial to do it by a comment versus kind of just typing it as I go. So if I create a comment here, create array, so it actually even kind of helped autocomplete that comment before I even finished typing it out. It knew that, you know, I was going to want to create an array with the numbers 1 to 10. And, you know, this is actually, so this right here is no longer going to work, right? Because I'm adding some additional code in here. So we're going to need to move this return block. Oops. Okay, there we go. So at this point, we can do, we'll just call it nums. And so this seems kind of like a really unnecessary version of how to create this array. It's actually not really giving me like an example that I like. So as we can see, this is not perfect. But if I type that opening bracket there, it gives me the 10 numbers, which this is what I'm looking for. So that's pretty cool. I like that. What is this? It's not. Oh, that's my fault. Didn't put the bracket there. Okay. So now we have this array here. So say I wanted to do this. This is another like really simple thing, but I just want to see what it does here. So oh, look at this. It again, all I did was make this unordered list tag, and Copilot automatically predicted here that I wanted to take that array that I made and map over those elements. So I'm curious what it's going to do next. Okay, it gives us a return block, and then it knows that we're most likely going to do list items in here, and it sets those keys to num. And then now it's going back to the context here that I gave it from this first comment, because I said that we wanted a component here that rendered a button. So that was kind of interesting that it could jump back and look at that previous context. Let's see. Okay. So let's change this to list. What does this do now? Okay, so now that I changed the outside comment context from rendering a button to rendering a list, it's changed so that now it's just going to kind of interpolate that number there inside of that list item instead of rendering an entire button component for each one. So this is really cool stuff. It's like super simple stuff, but it's like really cool though to play with. And actually this right here is broken. This does not need to be here, but that was my fault, not the Copilot. Yeah, because I changed up the whole like component here, so everything is a little bit broken right now. All right, so I probably just skipped over some stuff there. basically I was just trying to fix this code block. I screwed it all up with when I changed the component type and what I was trying to do here. And basically what happened was I screwed up and misplaced a bracket or a parenthesis somewhere, and then I had some linter errors, so I basically just paused it and fixed all that. But again, so changing the context here from button to list basically changed what Copilot was predicting here that I wanted to do, which is really cool because it just shows that Copilot can kind of adapt on the fly based on the context of the situation and what you're trying to code. But it's really cool that like you can do a lot more than just solving toy problems with like copy paste answers and creating React components and things like that. But it really can kind of help you with like more menial tasks, like creating this array right here with 10 numbers in it. Maybe you don't want to type all 10 numbers, so it helps you automatically predict those numbers. And I'm pretty sure that it could probably do something similar with objects. So let's just say names, or actually hold on, let me change how I'm going to do this here. So again, comment create an object with 3 names, and oh sorry, that was going to help me there, 3 names and 3 values. So alright, so it gives us const names, and then we have the first name, the second name, and the third name, and then a closing bracket. This right here is a linter error for not having a trailing comma. And again, it's actually kind of neat. It gave us some like sample names here, even though 2 of these are the same, so they're kind of like duplicate data. But it's interesting because you could probably use this and create some fake data like really quickly, for at least for like smaller data sets, instead of having to use something like Faker or type it out manually. So there's a lot of kind of like trivial use cases here that I think could be useful in the right circumstances. So let's talk about the verdict on GitHub Copilot after talking a bit about it and what we've just seen as far as what it can do. And just to clarify, this is just my own opinion. As far as what I think of it as a tool, I think that this is a pretty interesting piece of software. It's a very interesting tool, but that's exactly what I think it is. I think it's a tool. I do not at this point in time think that this poses any kind of threat to the jobs or livelihoods of developers anywhere. As you could even see here, there were quite a few times where it made suggestions that were either incomplete or did not accurately solve my problem, and I kind of had to work with them a bit to either get a better prediction or correct some inconsistencies and things like that. So it is a great tool, but it's not a perfect tool. It does not replace developers at all by any means. I think that this will continue to just be a tool for the foreseeable future. I think that one big thing here that especially separates this from having an actual software developer at your company is that the job of a software developer, software engineer, a web developer is not just to write code, but it is to solve problems. And solving problems is a process, and it takes a lot of time and thought and testing and things like that. And that's something that you don't get out of a tool like this. I think that this is best suited for either like students, people learning to code, or potentially people looking to speed up their workflow a little bit. But even using this, it can give you suggestions and stuff, but you still have to know like how to craft these different structures. Like you have to know like what a React component looks like and how to use it still. It's not going to create this component for you and then go import it and implement it into your application and then like write a test for it. Like it's not going to do all of that. You still have to know how that architecture fits together and how to build those things. This can just help you kind of speed up that process, I think. But I still think that this tool has a long way to go. I know that this is just a technical preview, and there's still a lot of work being done on this by GitHub behind the scenes. as well as Microsoft most likely, who is investing heavily into this project. But another thing to keep in mind is being that this is a technical preview, this is a free version of this as well. I am also in the beta for the OpenAI, and that AI API is not free to use. There is a cost associated with it, and they charge you based on tokens, and basically 1,000 tokens they say is equal to about 750 words of processing. So where that's important is that applies to this too, because their data model is using that same AI interface. So those charges are going to roll over to GitHub, but of course GitHub is going to want to be profitable on this product as well, which means they're going to charge probably more than what it costs to use the OpenAI API. So I 100% expect this tool to not be free when it is released as a full version at some point in the future. There could be a possibility of there being a free tier. I don't know that information for sure, but if there is a free tier, I would expect that it would be severely limited in its capabilities and potential compared to the paid version. But that really wraps it up for all of my thoughts that I have at this point on GitHub Copilot. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and I'm very interested to hear what your thoughts are on GitHub Copilot. So please tell me what you think about GitHub Copilot down in the comments below, and please feel free to smash the like button down below to help my content in the YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to the channel and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified when I post new content. Until next time, guys.